Hey, what's up, friends? Welcome back. Another episode of Bleav in Big Ten. Still kind of relishing in all the drama that we saw unfold from this past week in the Big Ten, especially up at Austin Stadium as we look ahead to what's coming up here in Week 8 of college football. And on that note, it is our great pleasure to be joined by one half of the Bleav in Oregon podcast, an Oregon Ducks legend, nearly 3,000 career rushing yards, 27 touchdowns from his time there in Eugene, and then went on to have a phenomenal NFL career as well. Jonathan Stewart is in the house here today. What's up, Jay Stu? How are we doing, brother?
Good, man. Thanks for the intro. Love the energy.
Yeah, man, we got to bring it here because we're talking about the best conference in America right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Coast to coast. Let's go.
You're right about that. It's when I heard the news that Oregon was going to the Big Ten, my immediate thought was, dang, it's too much change going on.
It's a lot.
Right? Too much change happening. I wasn't ready. But this has become such an opportunity, not just for University of Oregon, but I think sports in general.
Yeah.
We've seen so many changes in sports evolve over time. And I think the initial moves and changes throughout sports history, everyone's shocked and like, oh, I just want things to be the same.
Right.
But typically things get better and people enjoy things more. And I'm excited for, the rest of the nation and the Big Ten country to get to experience what Oregon's all about.
Yeah, and I think we all saw that, right, on a national stage in that game against Ohio State. And I want to start with just kind of the picture of that game to you, kind of overview. What stood out to you most about the way that Oregon played and won that game over Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, out the gate, our offense being able to put up the yards and move the ball the way they were moving. I think going into this year and what Oregon's typically used to is, the outcomes being a loss and the reason being because the lack of physicality, the lack of size in the trenches. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed watching was the ability to move the ball and the work that was being done in the trenches. Our offensive line did a great job of protecting the quarterback, and Dylan Gabriel did a good job of understanding, where he can move and in the pocket and where his escape routes were. Those types of things at this level against an opponent like that, not allowing any sacks, just being efficient, right? You can't really move the ball. You can't really get anything done unless you're winning at the line of scrimmage and vice versa on defense. We didn't have Jordan Birch, and Teo did a great job of, making sure that his presence was felt with his absence. And that's what you want to see. You want to see the depth chart step up in moments in time throughout a season when they're asked upon. It just shows our depth.
I agree with you on that. And to kind of go back to your point about, the offensive line and moving the football on the offensive side, felt like the offensive line was kind of the picture of the early obstacles, right? Had some injuries early on. Matt Bedford goes down. You're shuffling around, offensive linemen, trying to find the best combination, whether it was Poncho at right guard, Poncho moves back to center. Things feel like they've kind of come together for that group. How have you seen that part of it evolve for Oregon?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of, guys got to get used to hanging out with each other, right?
Yeah.
If you don't know certain guys' tendencies or their spacing and how they step, it takes some time to get used to, especially when you have live bullets flying around. It's different when you have, a fall camp and you're going at practice tempo and then you get thrown into a game. You have to figure out what that feels like for these, this group of guys. And it takes time, and and also understanding how to get up for a game. You're playing Idaho, you're playing Boise State, you're playing Oregon State. These teams that you're supposed to beat, and as an athlete, you go into every game expecting to compete at a high level. But there's also that thing in the back of your brain that says, "Oh, I got to make sure I'm healthy for Ohio State. I got to make sure I'm healthy for these big games."
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure there's a lot of that going around, but luckily we were able to, grow through those moments. I think you cannot level up without growth. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we experienced, this past Saturday is Oregon had the ability to grow throughout the season already. Whereas Ohio State, this was their first test. This was their first opportunity to really, come to, I think this is probably the first time they played in the fourth quarter, their starters, right?
Yeah, I mean, this was without question the biggest and
Yeah.
best probably that they'll face all season.
All season.
Even when you look
Yeah.
at Michigan, right? Because Michigan
Well,
doesn't feel like they're on that level yet.
well,
Penn State, though,
Penn
yeah.
State, I think is going to throw some haymakers.
Oh, no question, no question. Before you kind of close the book on that game against Ohio State, you look at what Jordan James has been able to do, going over 100 again on 23 carries, kind of has become the bell cow. Noah Whittington, was seeing some snaps, or at least he still gets his carries, right? Jaden Lamar. But this feels like this is Jordan James' run game. What impresses you most about him?
Just his physicality. I mean, you touched on it. He runs angry.
Yeah.
And that's what you're wanting out of a running back, especially at this level. And in this conference, especially, Big Ten's known for their physicality, especially when it gets cold and it gets long in the season and the early December games, right? So you got to make sure you have a running game and a guy that's willing to do the dirty work, and not a guy that is expecting huge gaps of holes to run through. Right. You're gonna have to figure out how to legit find those seams that are there, because those are, how I put it is, what is your running game going to be like when you have an NFL type of opponent, right? When you get to the NFL, you get to the next level, you're not running through, a garage size.
That's
hole.
right. That's right.
Being able to get those hard yards, those grind yards, those things pay off in the long run, because defenses do not like taking on blocks and then coming off blocks and then getting hit in the chest by a guy that's running angry.
No question. Okay, much more on the way here with Jonathan Stewart talking Oregon. I want to remind you, though, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. And with the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA to political props, when the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet online. The game starts here. Right back here with Jonathan Stewart from Bleav in Oregon following the Ducks' big win over Ohio State. And Dillon Gabriel, this was the game. This was what you expected when Dillon Gabriel came to Eugene, right? This was the type of game and production that you wanted to see from a player playing in his 6th year of college football. But it's going to start over 60 games by the time this season is done. That experience. So the pass game was much more explosive in this one, Jonathan. Did you kind of see that, they're finding something there in ways to get the playmakers the ball and in ways in which they can rattle off those chunk plays?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. His experience in big games, I think, is what sets him apart from everyone. And I still think that there's a lot there that he missed out on as well in this game, which is a good sign in my God honest truth. You don't ever want to peak in the middle of the season. Where you want to peak is at the national championship. So, or close to. But one of the things that I think he's getting a hang of is finding his receivers, and knowing which guys do what best, and understanding matchups and who he's playing against. Obviously, watching this game, he's been watching Ohio State film for a while, and he knew who to pick on. Number 10 was a liability out there.
Yeah, he wanted Denzel Burke, and they stayed away from Igbenogson on the other side.
Yeah, and so, I mean, understanding matchups is the biggest, factor when it comes to hitting those explosive plays, and getting into a groove. Evan Stewart had a career day.
This was the Evan Stewart game, right?
Yeah, this was the Evan Stewart game. And obviously, having a guy like Tez Johnson opens things up like that, for a guy like Evan Stewart. And then Trayshawn Holden, obviously got kicked out of the game. So the playmakers have to step up. And this is one of those games where Dylan Gabriel realized I do have a guy named Evan Stewart.
Yeah.
And it was a good game for him. But I also think the comfort level that he had in the pocket. Earlier on in the season, he was getting by, and playing, teams at a level that were inferior, and just kind of, playing the role of let me just work on my pass game.
Yeah.
And my offensive line just protect me. Once that started to kind of crumble a little bit, you can kind of tell, he was a little uncertain about certain things, as far as his decisions and the timing and all that. As the season progresses and your offensive line is blocking their tail off and they're giving you this confidence back saying, hey, we got you. And I just feel like he's comfortable in the pocket. He's comfortable in escaping. He knows where his guys are on the field to get the ball out, whether it's a completion or not, right? So I just think he's comfortable.
Yeah. And the other thing that stood out to me is like the last couple of weeks, way more so than the first couple, we're starting to see him, his athleticism take over.
Yeah.
A couple of these longer touchdown runs that have come up huge in these games. Obviously did here against Ohio State, but, had another, 40+ yarder, a couple of weeks ago as well. Like that part of the game, I feel like also gets lost, when you're talking about his skill set.
Yeah. As you see the season progress, the teams that you have to really game plan for, you'll see more quarterback runs. And I think you'll see that at any team that has a quarterback that has the ability to run it, get out of the pocket, or design runs. You'll see that more when you have to figure out a way to beat a team.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that early on because we didn't need to show it. And you don't necessarily want to show it all the time because you got to make sure you have something to surprise other teams with. And that was a great call by our offensive coordinator, and just very timely, where, again, you just hit it on the nail, where the defense wasn't going to expect it.
Yeah. I think Will Stein and Tosh Lupoya, both coordinators for Dan Lanning, have done a terrific job here, kind of growing on their respective sides of the ball each week. And as the season, progressed, right? Like the growth doesn't stop at training camp. Like that's not where the improvement ends, right? You grow, throughout the season. And so with that in mind, last question here for you, Jay Stu, is short week, right? No time to really bask in the glow of a win, your first program win over AP ranked number 2 team. And now you got to go on the road to West Lafayette to take on a team, that has played spoiler before, is definitely down there at the bottom of the standings here in the Big Ten in Purdue. How do you think Dan Lanning's DNA traits and his talk about connection kind of serves this team well in this type of scenario?
Yeah. Just making sure you're locked in, right? Find your process. That's the reason why football is so great, and in the ways that you have schedules, right? Stick to the schedule, get back on the program, celebrate the win Saturday, have a little bit of residue on Sunday, but it's a short week. So that residue on Sunday doesn't carry over as much as it does if you have a regular week. But just, go back to your schedule, and in your process of healing. This week is obviously going to be a week of mental reps more so than anything. So that way guys can heal up and feel fresh and ready to go. But as far as connection, we know what worked. We know what's going to work. And the answer is to run the ball. Run the ball.
Let's go.
Run the ball on away games, on short weeks. And you just got to out-grind your opponent. Purdue, I'm totally aware of how scary of an environment that can be for ranked teams.
Yep.
So you got to have, that mentality that you're going to get Purdue's very best, because to them, this is going to be their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They have a crazy losing record right now, 1-5, 1-6.
Yeah.
But you're going to get their very best. So you have to make sure you bring your hard hat, and that hard hat is Jordan James.
Run game and defense, baby.
Run game and defense, and hit them over the head with play action. And those will be your explosive plays, right? And hopefully by third quarter, we're seeing, some of our second string guys in there. That's my hope.
There you go. Well said, Jonathan Stewart. Check out all the great content that he's got out on the Bleav in Oregon pod right here on the Bleav Network. Appreciate you stopping by to chat some Big Ten here, bud. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for the time.
All right, back here on Bleav in Big Ten, and need to talk to you guys about what I consider the most essential part of an outfit. That, of course, here on Bleav in Big Ten, you know I love my hats. And the problem, though, is that when you start to wear the same hat over and over again, you run into some durability issues. You run into some sweat, some stain issues. Not the case, though, with melon hats. If that's what you're dealing with, you're doing it wrong. You need a hat to keep up with you, and that is where Melon comes in. They are built to last 5 times longer than any other hat. It is my new favorite hat. I've been wearing my Melon for the past few months straight, and no stains, no smell, looks the same as the day that I took it out of the box or the first time that I podcasted with it right here on Bleav in Big Ten. So the good news about Melon is they've got a hat for everything. And not just every occasion, but every season. So if you're jumping in the pool, the lake, the ocean, you're still kind of basking in the last few days of summer, then you need the Hydro collection. That's where you'll find all of the all-weather essentials with these Bleav hats. And then you get the Thermal collection, which as we transition into fall and winter will help you stay warm. So don't you worry. Melon has you covered there as well. So from USC in LA or Rutgers in Piscataway, there is a hat for every season, every climate, and every time zone right here with Melon hats. So if you're looking for a hat that's as tough as you, check out Melon. You won't wear anything else after you get one for yourself. All right, back here with you on Bleav in Big Ten, looking at a couple of our big matchups coming up this week 8 of college football. And the big noon kickoff is in Bloomington, Indiana, for a matchup where the number 16th ranked undefeated Indiana Hoosiers are going to be taking on the 5-1 Nebraska Cornhuskers. And there was a lot of this kind of optimism that you're seeing with Indiana put on Nebraska coming into this season, year 2 in Matt Rule's tenure there in Lincoln. And you know what? I think for both programs, it's been justified. And while Nebraska isn't ranked right now, they lost at home to Illinois, their lone blemish on the record. They've been very impressive, especially with a true freshman quarterback in Dylan Raiola, one of the most talented passers in all of college football, even as a 19-year-old. This Nebraska team is dangerous, no question. And I think the biggest problem that they present for Indiana this week is what they have going on up front. Ty Robinson, Nash Hupmaker, Jamari Butler, everybody that rotates through on that front for defensive coordinator Tony White and for Matt Rule there at Nebraska. Big, physical, and aggressive, and the ability to kind of take control up front if you let them. Now, Indiana's offensive line has played really well. You've seen the last 3 years, really step by step, that group has shown year over year probably more improvement than any other for Indiana, and kind of continued that way since Kurt Cignetti kept offensive line coach Bob Bostad, the lone remaining holdover from Tom Allen's staff the year prior. And I think the continuity there, the coaching that group is getting, and the talent that they have, led by, in my mind, Carter Smith, left tackle, tremendous player, Trey Wettig, the guards on the interior, Bray Lynch, and Drew Evans, and then, of course, the center, the legend, Mike Kadick, who's been a fantastic kind of glue to bring all that together here this year for that group. I think that's where this game is going to be won and lost. I think this is a fourth quarter game in Bloomington. And the good news for Indiana is that they have outscored their opponents 80-17 in the fourth quarter. And that's why I lean Hoosiers here. They have passed every test thus far. They have passed every test against teams that they're supposed to beat and teams that provided stiffer competition like Maryland and like Northwestern. When they needed big plays in the second half in those games, they got them. Their defense stood up when their back was against the wall, whether it be turnovers that the offense might have had, defense coming on the field in a sudden change situation. They've been able to limit the bleeding there in those types of situations. And then against Northwestern, when the game was kind of on the line, back and forth scoring, it was the last couple of possessions against the Wildcats where that defense stood up and kind of put the hammer down. So I think Curtis Rourke is playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now. Had a fantastic outing against Northwestern last time out. Both teams coming off bye weeks, which I think is really intriguing. You don't really see that very often. So we'll see what kind of game plan changes both these staffs have in store for each other. But it's going to be a great one on Fox, and look forward to recapping that here with you next Monday on Bleav in Big Ten. Also up this weekend, a ranked on ranked matchup, Illinois and Michigan, which I think is going to be a fantastic one to watch here. Illinois coming off a thriller, defeating Purdue in overtime, 50-49. And this is the 3:30 Eastern time game on CBS. 98th meeting for Illinois against the Wolverines, but the first at home since 2019. So this one in Champaign, going to be a big one. The Big Ten Network tailgate show is going to be there. Going to be a great environment. And I think that, Illinois has showed us some things in the past game this year that maybe they hadn't in years past. The connection between Luke Altmaier and Pat Bryant is one of the very best in this conference. And so when I look at that part of the matchup, that's where I think this game will be won and lost, because Illinois is going to face the best pass defense that they have faced all year long this Saturday against Michigan. And I don't just mean Will Johnson, who is, one of the best players in the country at his position at the corner spot, but I mean because of the pass rush that can be generated up front by guys like Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart. I think this is going to be the biggest challenge for the Illinois offensive line that we have seen thus far, and how they are, kind of limit the damage up front, limit the penetration up front, and give Luke Altmaier enough time to kind of see what's going on back there. I think that will be a big piece of what determines the outcome in this one. And then for Michigan, Jack Tuttle, what do you got? Right? Year 7 of college football. Came over from Indiana in a backup role a year ago, stayed on to get another year, had been banged up until this point, came on in relief of Alex Orji before Michigan's bye week, and now has had some time to kind of get reacquainted, reacclimated with his playmakers and with this offensive scheme. Now I'm kind of curious to see what direction Sharon Moore's offense is going to go here. I think that's going to be a big piece of the intrigue in this one. Are we going to see a more high-flying attack, or do we still grind it out with Kalel Mullings and with Donovan Edwards, who I think plays a bigger role in this game because of Jack Tuttle? I think we'll be able to find Donovan Edwards in the pass game a little bit out of the backfield and be able to use that terrific skill set for Donovan Edwards. So I think we see more from Edwards. I think you'll still see that element of the ground game that you always do and always expect with both these teams, really. But I think the passing game for both offenses is really going to be something to watch in this one once we get rolling there from Champaign this week. So I hope all you guys have been out there enjoying all of our content that's out on YouTube, the Big Ten, the Bleav in Big Ten playlist on the Bleav Network YouTube page. Obviously, wherever you get your podcasts, we are available. If you're on YouTube and you want to leave a comment for us, get in on the conversation. Get in there in those comments, and we can kind of go back and forth with what you think about your favorite team or this conference in general, and we can have a fun discourse on that one. So appreciate all you guys interacting with all of our content here on Bleav in Big Ten, and look forward to catching up with you following Week 8 of college football.